Page 60. But others will follow them, and take over, and continue their works, for the new age is the era of the truth, and not of the lies. Even if it will still take time, the truth will prevail. In the religions, the knowledge about the spiritual teaching and about the wisdom has gotten very badly out of control of the good human nature into an irrational belief. Pushing the spiritual teaching away from itself and disregarding all laws and recommendations of the creation, the religious irrational teachings have advanced to become a literalism created by earth human beings and have solidified into complete, quote, spiritlessness. Certainly, some old wisdoms are still handed down in various religious writings, which say that the letter is deadly and only the spirit brings forth life. But this wisdom is misunderstood by the earth human beings, despite all the good intentions and endless efforts of many truth proclaimers who tried to clothe this wisdom in understandable words. They were not able to awaken the sleeping and liberating powers in the human beings, which would have made the wisdom understandable to them. The irrational belief in a higher divinity on the one hand, and the compulsion for their own imperiousness on the other, let the earth human beings become doubtful within themselves. Thus, they are still today not able to grasp the sense of the creational truth. And so how could they have been able to understand, in their doubtfulness, the wisdom of the truth proclaimers, clothed in words? Deprived of the consciousness-based evolution by religions, they, the earth human beings, became stunted in consciousness-based poverty and lived only by the religious dogmas that they had been led to believe and the worldly, material machinations, and this up to the present time, which you call the 20th and soon the 21st century. Over the course of the time, as the religion has grown into a consciousness enslaving and exploitative might, and into a power anchored by irrational beliefs, the political powers of the world, as well, have in no wise lagged behind it in the same maliciousness. However, religion and politics were distinguished by the difference that enslavement and exploitation of the religions were coerced in the form of an erroneous belief in imaginary things, which are created, whereas the politics coerced its aim of the enslavement and exploitation with the immunity which only bloodthirsty might, power, and size could ensure them without any belief views. And when these murderous powers of the religion and politics are set in motion by human beings, then they only redound to death and destruction of the humankind, but never to its prosperousness. Strength and might are qualities which may only find use in knowledge and wisdom of the creational laws and recommendations and in their fulfillment. So if the earth human being, however, uses them only in fulfillment of their worldly and material desires, and hence directs them according to whim, they become powers of the evil, the enslavement, exploitation, and suppression. Inevitably, the consequence thereby appears again, that the enslaved, exploited, and suppressed rise up and rebel against these powers, allow themselves free rein to revolutionary ambitions, and reach for the sword. For where senseless evil powers prevail, death and ruin cannot be stopped. And wherever these evil powers appear in some place, there is always a great lack of spiritual and consciousness-based knowledge, of wisdom and recognition, and of the creational truth. For hundreds and thousands of years, all the ruling classes of the people of earth have lacked in knowledge and wisdom, in recognition, love, and truth. And in the present time, for these ruling classes, the knowledge and the wisdom about the creation and about its laws and recommendations are no more worthy than the innocently shed blood of human beings whom they have thereby allowed to be murdered by forcing them into war and murder. What then still remains of the earth humankind under such guidance, other than only the slithering way into the deadly abyss. For there is no stop to the insanity on your earth until the true spiritual human beings and truth proclaimers are appointed as leaders of the people, because only with them is the elimination of the prevailing insanity possible, because only they are selfless and know and follow the laws and recommendations of the creation in truth and wisdom. Even if the earth humankind is able to count these wise ones and prophets of the new time only on half a hand at the present time, these few are, in their knowledge and activity, still greater and mightier than the entire humankind. So the human beings should open their ears to these few, follow them and absorb and process their teachings of the Spirit and the creation, because in their following alone he or she finds the way to the true being. And when the earth human being raises these few wise ones and true prophets of the new time to the standing of his or her leadership, then he or she prevails in the sense of the laws and recommendations of the creation, and the victory will only be a question of time. But the earth human being should beware of false wise ones and false prophets, because these permeate all times and spaces like malicious ulcers. Their speeches are fine and promising, but they speak with split tongues and with malicious lies in their hearts. Therefore, may the earth human being examine very carefully what consciousness state and spiritual state the appearing wise ones and prophets are of. Everything lives in the law of the eternal developmental change and of the eternal becoming. Thus even the becoming and emergence of truth proclaimers proceeds from this law. To be noted with this, however, is that the becoming and emergence of the truth proclaimers and prophets is to be traced back to their own initiative, and they are thus decades or even centuries ahead of their actual time. In recognition of the truth, through a will awakened in them by their own power, they become seekers and researchers of the fundamental truth, find recognition and knowledge, and become wise. In this manner, they consciously walk the way of the truth and find their fulfillment in the activities of the creation itself, which they recognize as power, and follow its laws and recommendations. Undreamt of secrets are thereby revealed to them, and powers are bestowed upon them which are tremendously superior to the vasen of the same life form who stands below them in a consciousness-based manner. The earth human being should not doubt these facts, for they are clearly recognizable to him or her when he or she goes through the life with open eyes. If he or she looks at and considers the eternal developmental change and the eternal becoming and transfers them to the human life, then he or she recognizes that especially the leading powers of the people of earth are not willing to acknowledge these facts. Quite the opposite. They disregard this truth, push it into the dirt, and as incapable powers lead the fate of the peoples. They insist with their clenched fists on their inherited and acquired rights of a leadership position, and condemn those who possess natural law-based leadership qualities emerging from their consciousness-based and spiritual evolution in knowledge, truth, wisdom, and love. Expressed in other words, this means that the existing and ruling leadership classes are behind the times and not able to keep up with the time-related and consciousness-based evolution. They grossly disregard all demands of the progressive life and the changing times. Thereby, it inevitably entails that the cleft between the powers that persist and the powers that affirm the progress become even wider. Parts of the earth humankind remain lying on an evolution-hindering, low consciousness-based level, while other parts degenerate. Only a few forms try to evolve forward, in which case, however, they encounter religious and political obstacles through which they become confused and stopped. In an incomprehensible and unreasonable manner, the earth human being overstretches the bow of his or her destiny again and again, breaks it with Gewaltsamkeit, and thus destroys his or her tool, and with it his or her advancement and life. Instead of the consciousness-based and spiritual evolution, he or she thereby achieves only gewaltsame worldly and material upheavals, which appear in the form of wars, revolutions, murders, and manslaughter and other criminal acts. A fact that can be traced back and confirmed in the earthly history over thousands of years. Serving just as an example of this is the Great French Revolution, which caused worldwide cataclysms. It should be made clear that the progress of the Earth human beings, as everywhere in the universe, is connected with the creational law of the equality and the oneness. This means that two different factors must always be united in order to result in a oneness. These two factors, which in themselves each form a oneness, unite to result in a oneness again, namely the hyper-oneness. So human worldly and material progress for the Earth human being only forms one factor, which, however, is lacking the factor of spirit, namely the spiritual evolution, and only in their union would the oneness of the higher be formed. The hyper-oneness, therefore, cannot be achieved if only worldly and material progress is striven for and obtained, while the spiritual progress finds no entitlement.